As if Elden Ring wasn't already hard enough, the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion DLC takes it a step further with some crazy boss fights that can be absolutely brutal. In this video, I'm going to cover the top 5 most difficult boss fights in the game after recently completing it myself. If you are new to the channel, please take a moment to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video and are looking for more single-player video game content. But let's not waste any more time. Here we go. The first boss on my list here is going to be Rellana, the Twin Moon Knight. And this was really the first speed bump that I had in the game, so I figured it was very fitting to add to my list here of most difficult bosses in the game. Rellana has probably about 3 or 4 different attacks that can be pretty tricky to dodge, and I've actually come up with very sophisticated names to help describe them. First up we have the Twin Moon Super Slam, which you'll see when Rellana goes into the air. And honestly, even after defeating her, I didn't really figure out how to dodge this one. I don't know if you have to jump, but once you kind of get grabbed by the first moon, it seems like you're going to take damage for the rest of the attack. So definitely a pretty big deal to have a full health bar when you see Rellana go up for this attack. The next one I call the Mega Sword, and this one actually sweeps almost the entire boss arena when Rellana takes out her sword, does a overhead swipe, which you can roll out of the way, as well as rolling into her with the horizontal cross that, like I said, takes up almost the entire arena. Last but not least, the blue arrow attack, also going hand in hand with like the blue rune arc attack. These are obviously her ranged attacks, where she can hit you from any distance within the arena. The arena's not too big, but these ones aren't too hard to dodge. Aside from the rune ones, it's like, even if you get the first one on time, it seems like there's still a chance that the rest of the attacks you might be off pace for. At least that's something that I noticed. Rellana's very agile, very quick, and a couple of the times during my failed attempts, it almost seemed like she got more aggressive towards the end of the fight, and of course my greediness would have cost me there. Up next is going to be Bayle the Dread. This is the dragon boss that takes place pretty much at the end of the DLC, obviously depending on which way you go about completing the map, but this would be on top of the Jagged Peak, which is at like bottom right portion of the map. I think that Bayle is more of a intimidation factor as opposed to crazy difficulty, which I think most of the dragon fights in Elden Ring are, because a lot of the times it's almost like it's the player versus the camera when you lock on with R3. Obviously, it gets a little funky. They're huge. They fly over you. So those are some of my complaints with, obviously, all dragon fights in this game. And I can't really say too much about him not being incredibly difficult, because this was the end of my playthrough. Bayle was the final boss that I faced. Of course, I summoned both my Mimic Tear, and you even get an NPC, Egon. You have the option to call him in once you get into the boss arena. He's actually the NPC at the bottom of the Jagged Peak, once you arrive for the first time and you see those 2 dragons fighting at the base. Up next is Commander Gaius, and honestly thought I was done with these commander guys once I finally beat Commander Nile in the base game, but here we are. I'm doing my thing and this dude on a wild boar comes sprinting in from the middle of the woods, which in my opinion, one of the cooler entrances for bosses in the entire game. But this guy gave me a lot of challenges, honestly. He's a very powerful enemy, almost like the Tree Sentinel. Obviously, he's mounted on his boar rather than a horse, but he has some attacks that hit obviously a lot harder, and a electric attack aspect to him as well. It took me a while to figure out that most of his attacks can actually be parried, so what I actually ended up doing was going out and grabbing one of my great shields, upgrading it, and hiding behind it, honestly, for a lot of the fight. Doing that, staying close to him, I was able to obviously finally win the boss fight. Still took me about 45 minutes or an hour, but this guy gave me a lot of trouble for probably the most unexpected boss fight, I think, in the entire game. Up next we have Messmer the Impaler, who is really without a doubt my favorite boss in the entire game. Whether that's the DLC or the base game, I think Messmer the Impaler is 100% my favorite boss. And that's even taken into consideration that the whole fight took me at least 3 hours from what I kept track of. and that was across a couple of different sessions. It took me almost an hour just to figure out that he even has a phase 2. So it was definitely a fight I struggled with, which may be part of the reason why I appreciate him so much. I mean, you'll see it in the clip where I finally defeated him. I really had like the whole first sequence of the first phase memorized, so I know that's actually the point of the game and all the boss fights, but I was actually able to dodge a lot of his attacks because he really started off with the same attacks almost every time. One of the moves that I struggled with early on was I call it the Impaler move, hence Messmer the Impaler. He grabs you, his hand kind of lights up with this fire, so it's pretty easy to see once you know what you're looking for, but this will one-shot you definitely. He'll throw you in the air and he'll stab you with his sword spear thing. He even has like a Malenia waterfowl type dance, call it or consider it the fire fowl, and I think this one's a little bit harder than what Malenia does because he does it in the air, and obviously he has the fire element on his weapon. Between that and the Impaler move, I mean, I was definitely struggling with these two, I think the most, at the start of my attempts. One more in phase 1 that he has, it's like the Garden of Swords, where he'll crash down into the arena and then have like an AoE attack where all these swords will jump up. And I don't really remember trying to jump, but it seemed like every time I tried to roll away from it, if I was close to him, I mean, I just couldn't get away from it. So between these 3 attacks, definitely huge reasons why I struggled with Messmer at the start. Thankfully, once you get to phase 2, it's actually not too bad. Of course, it's just a matter of actually getting to phase 2 and then having enough flasks remaining. I mean, in my case, depending on how much health my spirit summon had, but he turns into a snake, and it just requires a lot of patience for when he finally does return to his form, because that's when you can definitely get some hits off of him. But when he's doing his whole snake thing, you really just have to stay patient and stay out of the way. And last, but certainly not least, I would say it is borderline impossible to talk about this DLC without mentioning the Promised Consort Radahn. Promised Consort Radahn is the final boss fight in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, widely considered to be one of the hardest FromSoftware bosses ever created. Even as of December 2025, at the recording of this video, he has been nerfed, I believe, twice, and I faced him after these nerfs, and still think he is on his own level, his own tier of difficulty within this game. And unfortunately, even after all of those accolades, I guess, I really didn't enjoy this boss fight. You know, I think unfair, I don't know if that's the word to describe it, but mostly talking about phase 2, it's just such a frustrating part of this fight. But staying on track with phase 1 to start here, I think this part of the fight really isn't difficult at all. It's very balanced. A lot of his attacks are easy to time up. He's even weak to rot. It didn't take me long to beat phase 1 pretty consistently once I finally got to Radahn. And when you finally start phase 2, the fight's really not even halfway over yet because he starts with like 65% of his health bar. And Miquella also joins in on this fight. And if you haven't noticed, I mean, the bright white blonde hair that Miquella has just makes it absolutely brutal to see during this part of the fight. Really, it's like phase 1, but like multiplied by 10. It turns into the Radahn light show with some of these never-ending combos. And like I said, a lot of, at least my frustrations, which I've seen be shared before, are just the fact that it's really tough to see during this part of the fight. And the crazy part is that when I finally got to this final boss and found out that it is Radahn again, the Radahn festival in the base game is a huge highlight of the game. You're getting ready to go onto the beach. You have these guys screaming that the festival is nigh. There's a whole ceremony. You get to summon all your boys. Alexander the Pot joins in on the fight. And then you get to the DLC here, and you have to deal with this. It's absolutely ridiculous. I ended up cheesing the fight. Honestly, I was on this for about a week. I really had no shame in doing so. I found a cheese build where I used like the fingerprint shield and a sword to just hide behind and poke Radahn until I finally got the job done. But almost the complete opposite of Messmer, which was a very satisfying and respectable fight for me, this was really the complete opposite. This fight and the fight against Radahn in the base game, I don't think could be any more different. Well, there you have it. Those are the top 5 hardest bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree in my opinion. If you think I left somebody out, if you agree, if you disagree, go ahead and leave a comment below. I do reply to every single comment. And like I said, if you enjoy the video, please take the time to subscribe to the channel so that way you don't miss another video. We'll see you next time.